Do you want to spend an enormous amount of effort transporting massive amounts of beverage containers across state lines while also committing a felony? Well, if so, I have the perfect crime for you: recycling fraud. A family who runs several recycling centers in Arizona was caught involved in a scheme that involved illegally smuggling a grand total of 178 tons of empty aluminum cans and plastic bottles over 8 months from Arizona to California in order to redeem money awarded in California as an incentive to encourage Californians to recycle. But how much money could you actually make redeeming beverage containers with a program that only offers like 5 or 10 cent returns per container? $7.6 million. That's how much this family made. That is astonishing, quite frankly. This family made $7.6 million. Now, the family that did this is being faced with charges of conspiracy, grand theft, recycling fraud, and perjury. Such a serious punishment, right? They're being faced with felony charges. Such a serious punishment might surprise you, but it makes sense if you consider that the money that recycling centers give out are raised by the taxpayers of that state. So essentially, this family was taking tax money from a system that they didn't pay into. It also makes sense if you consider the comically large amount that this family made from the scheme, which, might I remind you, was $7.6 million. So I found an article from the Los Angeles Daily News from 2022 that suggested that recycling fraud costs Californians between $40 million and $200 million every year, which is an insane amount. We have touched on one of the ways that recycling fraud is done, which is importing non-Californian redemption value cartons from out of state, like from states from Arizona or whatever, to California. I assume Arizona doesn't have any program to offer money for, containers, and that's why they sort of do this. But additionally, you can also commit recycling fraud by maybe if you have a big load of containers, like if you have a truck full of them, what you could do is you could take some CRV, that's what they call it, short for non-California redemption value. You could do something like you could take broken glass and mix it with the containers to make it heavier. Or recycling centers themselves can actually commit recycling fraud by overstating how much weight in containers has been given to them in order to get more money from the governments offering these incentives. It's just a very odd crime, don't you think? Like in prison, what are you in for? Recycling. If committing recycling fraud isn't your crime of choice, have you considered stealing specifically 200,000 Cadbury Creme eggs, which is what one person did from the UK. One 32-year-old from the UK last February stole $40,000 worth of Cadbury Creme eggs after breaking into an industrial unit and making off with the eggs in a stolen truck. He was very quickly caught by the police and surrendered. What's crazy is that because the chocolate eggs weren't tampered with at all, I think that the eggs were able to be put back onto the shelves. So if you had a Cadbury Creme egg last Easter in the United Kingdom, it is very possible that that egg had gone on an adventure where it had been stolen in a stolen truck and was racing down the highway, which is crazy. So anyways, this man was recently sentenced to 18 months in jail for theft, criminal damage, and driving without insurance. Okay. Driving without insurance. Those first two, who cares? Anyways, this past July was very hot, don't you think? It was likely the hottest month in the history of human civilization. Temperatures in Death Valley reached as high as 128 degrees Fahrenheit, while Phoenix, Arizona, on the other hand, broke a record for the most consecutive days in a row with temperatures over 110 degrees, managing to get 30 days of 110 plus degrees of heat. It wasn't just the Americas experienced extreme heat either. In Europe, an observatory in Palermo, Sicily, in July, which has been keeping temperature records since 1791, hit its record high of all time of 117 degrees. We do have weird news stories about this that are related to this. This is why I'm talking so much about the heat. For example, an Arizona school librarian was helping kids cross the street. He was only outside for 30 minutes before going back inside. But when he went back inside, his shoes felt different. And in fact, he almost tripped because the soles of his shoes had melted off because of the hot pavement. Wow. That is very hot. In addition, over the past several weeks, many emergency rooms have seen an uptick of contact burns as people have been falling over and getting burned from the pavement. People have literally been getting second and third degree burns from just falling over and getting burned from the very hot pavement. When the temperature is, very hot, like 100 to 110 degrees, the pavement can actually reach temperatures of 160 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. All it takes is a couple of seconds of your skin being exposed to that sort of temperature in order to be burned. More horrifically, in my opinion, is the people that collapse due to a medical reason and are on the ground for potentially, several minutes, potentially a long time, and just getting, more and more burned as time passes. Stay away from the sidewalk, I guess. I don't know. Sidewalk is everywhere. What are we supposed to do? I guess just live in fear. Texas recently passed a bill into law that strips construction workers of the right to have mandatory water breaks every 4 hours and time to rest in the shade. Effective starting this September. So it's not even that the entire state of Texas had mandatory water breaks before this. It was only required by some local governments, such as Dallas and Austin. It seems as this law actually makes it so that local governments can't enforce mandatory water breaks, which is insane. I work outside, and it wasn't even hot where I live. The hottest it's been in July where I live is like 95 degrees, and I was dying. Maybe I'm just like a huge wimp, but while I was working, I'm like, imagine it being 15 degrees hotter. Why does anyone even live in Texas? It seems too hot, in my opinion. Do you love free hero submarines, but also happen to just hate your own name? If so, I have potentially good news for you. Subway, the restaurant, is running a competition to allow one lucky sandwich enthusiast to change their name to Subway in exchange for free Deli Hero subs for life. The way it works is participants enter a drawing, and one lucky winner will get the opportunity to change their name to Subway. Lucky indeed. The only bad thing that I can see about this competition is that the subs you are winning are from Subway. I don't know if it's me, if my sandwich order is just bad, or if it's Subway's fault that I'm always disappointed by Subway subs. They do have new meat slicers at many Subway locations. So now they cut their own meat on site instead of having pre-sliced meat. I don't know if that will make my next experience better. This reminds me of a story a while back about a similar competition from a restaurant in Taiwan that offered free sushi to anyone who changed their name to the word salmon. The thing is that in Taiwan, you can only legally change your name 3 times. So some people were stuck with the name Salmon. That will never not be funny to me. It does seem like it would suck to be stuck with the name Subway, but that's just me. Okay. There was a manatee named Hugh that used to live in a Florida aquarium. The key word here being used to. I guess that was 2 words. Because Hugh died unexpectedly last April 29th. A necropsy, an autopsy done on an animal, was done, and the cause of death that was determined is quite shocking. I don't think that you are prepared for the way that this manatee died. Okay, so here we go. So Hugh lived with his brother Buffett. Hugh died because of a 14.5 centimeter rip in his colon and other traumatic injuries caused by a sexual encounter with his brother Buffett. Apparently, every year the two would experience a seasonal 2 months of increased sexual behavior towards each other, and there were no signs of distress from either of the manatees, and separating them would cause them to have anxiety, so they kept the 2 manatees together. Oh, but look what happened. Catastrophe. Being boned to death by your brother. What a way to go. Traveling over to Santa Cruz, California, surfers, kayakers, and wildlife officials alike are experiencing a real headache over a highly aggressive sea otter that has been commandeering surfboards away from surfers and aggressively approaching kayakers. This individual otter likes to ride the waves, and in at least one instance, bit and tore off chunks of a surfboard with its mouth. Honestly, terrifying. If you were just trying to have a nice, relaxing day and a otter steals your surfboard. I don't know, though. Maybe the type of people that would like surfing would actually be into this. Like, whoa, dude, the otter totally got my board, dude. Oh, look, it's totally tearing off chunks with its teeth, dude. Otters aren't normally dangerous. They do have a pretty strong bite, though. It could probably be pretty painful. Probably the equivalent of like a dog's bite, at least. So I would try to stay clear of highly aggressive otters if possible. A zoo in eastern China is denying suggestions that some of its bears might be people in costumes after videos surfaced on social media of a bear standing in a peculiar way, a peculiar human-like way. It sounds strange, but if you watch the video, it does kind of look like how I would imagine a person in a bear suit would look. The zoo has maintained that the sun bear in the video is definitely a real animal, But I don't think people are crazy for thinking this way. Other Chinese zoos in the past have been accused of trying to pass off dogs dyed to look like wolves or African cats, and donkeys painted to look like zebras. I do personally think that it is actually a bear. I've only ever seen the few-second clip of the bear, and I would have to have more evidence before thinking that this was a man in a bear suit. All in all, it would have to be a pretty realistic bear suit as well to fool people. But typically, you don't see that many hyper-realistic animal suits out there. Am I right? Well, on to our next story. A man in Japan that goes by the moniker Toko on social media paid $15,700 to buy a quadrupedal hyper-realistic dog costume. And it is, somewhat uncanny, honestly. Toko has been releasing videos on social media since his debut in 2022, but only recently has he uploaded a video of himself outside on a walk, interacting with the public. Dogs can be seen approaching the dog suit and then scurrying away once they realized that something weird was going on. This is sort of the uncanny valley for dogs, probably. You know what? I do think that we should all aspire to live as freely as Toko clearly does, doing what makes us happy, even if it's very weird. I think he's clearly having a very great time. I don't know what I would do if I saw a realistic dog costume like that in the wild. I'd probably just try to not go anywhere near it, because I wouldn't know how to interact with it, you know? Longtime viewers of the channel know that I like to end weird news reports on a really good article, and this week's no different. Have you ever been tired of having to add mustard to your Skittles yourself? I don't know. Or alternatively, do you ever wish that your hot dog was just a little chewier? Well, fret no longer, as in celebration of National Mustard Day, Skittles is releasing mustard-flavored Skittles. Sort of. You won't be able to find them on store shelves. There will only be 3 cities where you can find these Skittles for a very limited amount of times in, sort of stalls that are sort of set up in these cities. But just knowing that these abominations exist is enough to make me upset. However, knowing that how hard these Skittles will be to find, I kind of want to try them. If they were available anywhere, I would have less interest in them. It's a stupid feature of the brain, to be sure. All right. Well, that's pretty much it. Thanks.